through the whole arc. These guys used to run shit. Big dick swinging everywhere. Well, moderate-sized dick swinging everywhere. Fuck that, dude. I'm gonna be honest. I don't even believe in white male privilege. Shut up. I'm waiting for you to shut the fuck up. People always say, name one thing a white male can't have. Okay, an opinion. Opinions are liberating. I literally get paid for mine. The second a white guy even starts to have one, the entire internet is like, your privilege is showing. Maybe you should check your privilege. I hate that, dude. Let a white guy express himself. Because if you don't, they bottle up all their feelings. And then they fester and get real dark. And then they walk into a voting booth every 4 years. And the rest of us are like, how the fuck did this happen? That's how! You didn't let them say anything. Then one guy showed up and said everything. And they were like, that's my guy! It's like the Dark Knight for white dudes. Not the hero we need. The hero we deserve. I'll tell you another thing a white dude can't have, an excuse. Let me tell you something, white guy. If you fail, it is your fault. And I'm gonna tell you right now, you look like you've been through some shit. But nobody cares how much you struggle. It don't matter if you grew up in a trailer park and your daddy beat you and your mom was addicted to white people crack. Meth, you guys know I'm talking about meth, right? It's fucking ravaging middle America. It's kind of funny in a karmic sense, but the point is, we just look at white men like they're cats. We're like, he'll land on his feet. That sucks, dude. There's freedom of being a minority. The freedom I have, if I fail, not only is it not my fault, it's still your fucking fault. Ain't that crazy? I'm not talking to all minorities. I understand black Americans have been taken advantage of, mistreated for centuries. I get that. But when I see people who look like me talking about white privilege, where were your parents? They didn't teach you about your American privilege? I grew up in the 90s and I tried being woke back when it was just lazy. And they set me straight. Mom, Dad, you know white people have jobs Indians can't access. They'd be like, okay. You know what you have that real Indians can't access? Toilets. There's a lot of folks, if you try to describe toilets, they would think it was actual magic. They'd be like, wait a minute, hold on. You doo-doo into a machine? Press a button. Doo-doo disappears? Where does it go? And you're so privileged, you'd be like, honestly, bro, I never even thought about it. Parts unknown, I guess.
I mean, it doesn't work. Yeah. But extreme capitalism, as we're seeing right now,
does not
with
work.
This corporate capitalism, also has its problems.
How much money is too much money for one person?
It's a tough call. I know. When they have these billions, you're like, well, they really don't need it. Yeah, we agree with that.
Why Trump instead of Bernie Sanders?
What I look at is more progressives like the Bernie Sanders faction, stuff like that. We actually see a lot of the same problems.
And I would vote for a Bernie Sanders before I'd vote for like a Ted Cruz or a Marco Rubio.
What would it have taken for you guys to not go into the rally and to instead get ice cream with me, a flaming leftist?
Well, first of all, you'd have to buy.
All right, I'm buying. We are polarized. There is no doubt about it. But I came to this Trump rally on a hunch. I've poured drinks at a Rust Belt dive bar for the last year, and when your county votes for Trump and the bartender looks like I do, people kind of assume that you're on the same page. But sometimes you actually are. So here's my hunch. For all the focus on culture war issues, the working class on the left and the right have a lot more in common than we're led to believe. And if that's true, it could and should have huge implications for the upcoming presidential election. So I went to Erie, Pennsylvania to find out. Are we rolling?
You know, he's definitely not a Republican because Mitch McConnell and them would be backing him and DeSantis would be running against him. He's obviously not a Democrat no more. So we're more of a politically homeless faction that loves America and will make all the changes that we can to make it great.
Prices are just higher. Like, you go to the grocery store, I buy the same thing every time I go to the grocery store. I spend $102 at Aldi's. I was just telling my uncle this. I'm spending over $200 now. So things are more expensive. I think people are more scared.
Our money doesn't have no value, and that's why we're having problems. This whole inflation thing, it's been building and building for multi-decades, and it's getting close now.
I worked down in West Virginia.
Yes.
On the rigs for evil Big Red, Halliburton.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Halliburton, we were 2 weeks on, 1 week off, so you never got to go home. We were the lowest paid of all the workers out there. I only made $13.50 when I got hired on.
For Halliburton.
For Halliburton, yep. Probably wouldn't even have an Iraq war if it wouldn't have been for the Halliburton and Cheney and stuff. We were expendable. That's all it was. Halliburton, Big Red, they called it. You're just part of the machine, and the machine can be replaced.
As expendable as, people who went over to fight a rich person's war in Iraq.
Yep, pretty much.
5 years ago, I came to the realization that I've been hoodwinked. I have zero respect for Dick Cheney. I have zero respect for George Bush.
What did it for you there, and why did you end up going towards Trump?
It was a lie.
And this
they lied about the Iraq war. There was no reason for us to go into war in Iraq other than the military-industrial complex
It's just a conspiracy
wanted
theory
a war.
The global corporations, do they have, the Goldilocks question: too much, just enough, or too little power? Where would you place it?
I feel like their only thought is more money, more power. That's all you care. Whoever has the most money.
Obviously, it's too much.
Yep.
When you have a company like BlackRock that's worth $9 trillion,
and Vanguard's what?
Vanguard's $8 trillion. Obviously, I'm not going to argue. There's a problem with that.
What role do you think, the consolidation of these larger corporations? I came from an agricultural background, and now it'll be 3 or 4 companies that control the entire market for chicken, for eggs, for beef.
That shouldn't happen.
Yeah. The working class has gotten beaten up because of the loss of small businesses. And my question would be, I would say, why aren't they here anymore?
As a small business owner, I feel like we aren't represented that much in America.
Do you see a problem with that kind of operation?
Oh, 100%.
When it's concentrated?
Because the big guys are beating out the small guys or even the family-owned businesses, easily.
A lot of that's driven by these really large corporations that are, just by their size, pushing the little guy out.
Yes.
How big of a problem do you think that is?
That's an ultimate problem. That reminds you of watching them Westerns movies when they would go to some small town and the one guy owns the bar, he owns the tack place, he owns that. Yes. There's so many houses for sale in our neighborhood. I was going to go to town and say, are these all, can we find out, are these just real people buying them, or is this like proxies? See, BlackRock proxies, Vanguard proxies. Are they buying all these homes so people can't own them and they're just going to rent them?
I believe it needs to be broken up. Just like, remember the telephone company in the 80s, AT&T? That was broken up.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to be done.
Capitalism's not the problem. It's been corrupted to such a level, just like people think all the politicians are corrupted. But it's corrupted at the highest levels of these corporations, like you said, being owned. Instead of 200 of them, you're down to 4. Yeah. That's massive control. I always even consider Trump even like a crony capitalist. He's not perfect, you know what I mean? He was a capitalist guy, and everybody always read where he would eminent domain against take the lady, kick her out of her house for all that stuff. Yeah, that's falls into that. Like I said, I don't know, the power is so strong that these people have built up that, and I don't have answers, and because I know that's what you want. You want to hear what can we do.
What else, Will? I look out at a couple 100,000 workers at UPS recently.
Yes. Did they vote on it yet?
So they haven't voted on it yet.
I heard about that.
It was negotiated, and there was, threat of the strike. They were really organized. They won $30 billion over the term of that contract. by being organized. So I look at something like that and say, if this is about control and about working class people having a seat at the table at a company as big as UPS, we just saw their unity win $30 billion worth of, cash in the pocket. Does that sit well with folks?
Nonviolent direct action does work. We've been hearing all about the boycotts. You just mentioned 100,000 people. That's a lot of people. You don't want to mess with that.
This contract was $30 billion. That was from workers standing together. Didn't have anything to do with government. Is that something you guys support?
Sure.
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Absolutely. Right. We lost our republic decades ago. We're living in an oligarchy. So they're the ones calling the shots because that's where the money's come from, the media, everybody.
You'll see things like the board or whatever they put on, the TV. You'll have...
Or trying to divide people.
Yes.
A lot of the stories are trying to divide people. to get them to go
Keep them
against
off
each
the
other.
ball.
We're not supposed to be doing this.
Yeah, it's weird that it's that.
They want. I
weird
feel like
that
this
we're
all for
talking-
distraction, to be honest.
Yeah.
They want us to argue.
It is. That's
Yeah,
exactly.
They want us
It's
to
this
argue.
facade of
Yes.
or there's two sides when in reality there hasn't been two sides since the 1980s.
It did not take long to find people who agree that politicians should reject the money from billionaires, should break up massive corporate monopolies, end forever wars, and join workers on the picket line. And you would never know that if you just watched Fox or CNN. So let's try a thought experiment. What would it look like if for this one presidential election, we had conversations like these that focused on the working class, what they demand, what they need, what they deserve? What would the debates be about? What would the candidates' platforms be like? Who would ultimately win, and how would they be forced to deliver?
How much, Joe, have you looked at, Larry Fink, Soros, State Street, Vanguard, BlackRock? How much have you looked at what they're doing and what their ties are?
I've looked at it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
They're pretty much running everything.
Yeah.
S&P 500, the number that 88% of the companies on S&P 500, 88% of them, the largest shareholder of those companies is either State Street, BlackRock, or Vanguard. 88% of them, okay? And then you see their influence in defense contracts, okay? So we went through a deal. I'm like, let me see if these guys, this ESG, Larry Fink, Vanguard, State Street, if they have any influence on military contract, defense contracts. If you Google the largest shareholder for Raytheon, 3 out of the 4 top shareholders of Raytheon, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. It could be top 3 with Raytheon, but I think it's 3 out of 4. If you go look up General Dynamics, if you go look up Boeing, if you go look up, Northrop Grumman, okay? And then you work backwards and you say, okay, how much money is that in what these guys are doing? You'll find the amount of money we spent in our military, $744 billion on how much we're making from defense, but you'll see some numbers saying last year it's 13% of our GDP, which is around $850 billion. That's more than the next 10 combined. We gave more money to Ukraine than Russia spent on their military last year. And when you look at these contracts, then you're like, okay, Fink is there, these guys are there. Like, okay, well, how big is BlackRock? $10 trillion. How big is $10 trillion? Only 2 countries have a bigger GDP than what BlackRock has, assets under management, U.S. and China. That's how big BlackRock is. So then they went and they started getting all these other guys to sign on and say, hey, we want you to participate with the same thing as well with ESG. And they ended up having, I think they had 31 signers. I think end of 2022, they got 60 something signers for a total of $70 trillion of assets under management that they're controlling. So now they're controlling other places. And just recently, if you saw the rebuilding of Ukraine, did you see this contract? Rebuilding of Ukraine, $400 billion contract. BlackRock and Chase is helping rebuild Ukraine. And then, okay, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but what the hell is going on here? Who's the money behind these organizations? Comes back, Soros. How do you feel about the kind of power they have right now to fight against them? Because this isn't like a billionaire can come out and say, I'm going to go up against these guys. They don't have a little bit of money. A billionaire to these guys is nothing. They got the kind of control that can make companies fire boards. They can replace CEOs. They can replace leaders if they don't like. They have their hands so much into it where many times when people say the people of power, I'm kind of like, who are the people of power? Are you convinced these guys are really running the world? Or what do you think about what some of these bigger companies are doing, like State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock? It's only 5 companies right now when you want to buy anything. Think about that. So defense contractors is 5. We know how these guys make money. Earlier, I was asking you a question, why do you think vaccine? And you're like, Pat, that's how they make their money, right? I mean, if you and I run a hotel, rooms are empty, we're not making money. We need people to stay in the rooms. If you and I are running a hospital, we need people on the beds to make money.
Yeah.
If there's no people on the beds, we ain't making money. If these 5 contractors are fighting for $744 billion, what do they want more of? Wars. That's a valid concern that I have. Because behind closed doors, this whole military-industrial complex, when you look at the numbers, whoever becomes the president, unfortunately, this guy's an anti-establishment president, good. Unfortunately, if you're an anti-establishment president, everyone's going to come after you, especially these military defense contractors. So if a president got up and said, if I'm going to be the president, here's what we're going to be doing. We have to look at all the contracts. You can't overcharge us. We have to open it up. You have to sell some of your companies. You have to let them be independent again. You have to do this. You have to. Jamie, do you mind pulling up the quote? I think it's, if you type in LA Times, Soros, God. If you type in LA Times, Soros, God, when you hear what he says, it's like the second to the last paragraph all the way to the bottom. The guy asks a question, about who he views himself as. I want to quote it properly, exactly what he says in this interview.
Is there a video of him saying
Yeah, a 60-minute. There's a video as well. So if you go all the way to the bottom, right there. It seems that Soros believes he was anointed by God. I fancied myself as some kind of a god. If truth be known, I carried some rather potent messianic fantasies with me from childhood, which I felt I had to control. Otherwise, they might get me in trouble. And then on the next line, when asked by Britain's independent newspaper to elaborate on the passage, Soros says, it is sort of a disease when you consider yourself some kind of a god, the creator of everything, but I feel comfortable about it now since I began to live it out.
The right will do it. The QAnon thing's kind of a way they're doing it, where they're like, David Spade's got an ankle bracelet on and he's in jail and Trump's put everyone under house arrest. Like, they're in this other thing where it's like, oh, you guys have left the planet. And you,
explain to people who don't know what this QAnon shit is.
Well, the QAnon stuff is like, there is this idea that there's an intelligence dissemination operation happening, meaning behind the scenes, high-level intelligence guys or military people are leaking information about a shadow war that we don't really see happening. And the shadow war involves Trump and the people on the side of lightness battling these deep state pedophile cannibals. Like, I don't know why. Like, never understood why they have to be cannibals.
I didn't know they were cannibals.
They're cannibals. They're eating children, and then they get the adrenochrome, and it keeps them young.
Oh, that's right.
So this is all thing. And then Trump is going to war with all of them.
Right.
Now, listen, pedophilia is a big problem. They do cover up shit at high levels, 100%.
Yes.
The Epstein stuff is 100% real.
100%.
Clinton's on that plane. He's on that island.
26 times.
Yeah, the Franklin scandal. There's scandals all over the world. So I'm not delegitimizing like the idea of real human trafficking, but the idea that Donald Trump is fighting human traffickers and the human traffickers are Ellen, who is a little wild. That everyone in Hollywood's eating children and there's tunnels under Central Park. I mean, it's hard to keep up with. And the Q drops, so to speak, are like these they're like poems or they're coded information. So it's never like, hey, this is what's happening.
Where do you get these drops?
Where do you get them? 4chan or something? You get them like on 4chan.
Okay, but 4chan is the best place in the world for trolls.
It's a lot of, well, that's what maybe this is. This could be like
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it could be a high-level troll. Nobody knows. Because it has nuggets of truth.
Right.
Just like anything else, right?
Yeah.
It has nuggets of very real things. The government is shady as fuck. A lot of the elites are doing things, engaging in pedophilia, and probably worse. worse.
Yeah.
Like, some of those kids on Epstein's Island probably did disappear. But the idea that, like, that Trump is fighting this underground war and it's all about human trafficking, I just don't think that's borne out by the facts. Like, there's no facts to point. I mean, Trump was like friends with the Clintons for his whole life.
Well, not only that, if Trump was doing it and not talking about it, it would be so out of character. Like, imagine this one thing that he's doing is the most noble thing that he's ever done, ever.
Right, he's
the
not
most
mentioning
selfless, the most important, the most for
Right.
humanity, and he's not even
Yeah.
bringing it up. He's just secretly winking
Yeah.
at all the Q people.
Well, you know, and so everything he does, there's like a reason that he does it, they say. Like when he wished Ghislaine Maxwell, he goes, I wish her well.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is,
What was
that's
that?
that's a rich guy who's forgetting he's the president, who's just on a tee at Mar-a-Lago, because that's how rich people talk. I mean, that's literally, and I've been around a few like really wealthy people. This is how they talk when you say something bad, anything bad. If you go, you know, John's wife has cancer, you know, their kid had a DWI, he's got a problem, he had a couple incidents there at Harvard. They go like this, I wish him well. Tee off. Like that's how they talk. That's how they talk. It's just a dismissal.
Yes.
It's a way to dismiss it.
Yep.
But the Q people are like, oh, there's a meaning. There's a hidden meaning.
Right.
He's saying that and if you look at Ivanka's wearing this dress and it means, and it's just like, listen, I'm a conspiracy guy, but this is exhausting.
Well, I don't
It's like
care.
too much.
Do you, Jack?
Yeah, I don't know, man. You know, Steve Bannon said something, and there was a documentary about Errol Morris made a documentary about Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon said this very interesting thing. He said, you know, there's a guy out there who's got a horrible life. Like, he's divorced, his kids don't like him, he has a shitty job. But when he plays like League of Legends or World of Warcraft, one of these games, he's a hero. And when he dies in real life, nobody really cares. But when he dies in the game, so many people come out and they show him respect because you're playing with people from all over the world. So Bannon's like, which life is the real life? So, which of course, it's the real one that you're living, not this fantasy game. But I think the QAnon thing, I think the Trump administration is like, yeah, let people believe they're hunting pedophiles online. It gives their lives meaning.
Right.
Like, let these people believe they're like hunting the Clintons. It's like fun. It's like a fun video game for them. And then they don't have to ask why they don't have health insurance and can't get a knee operation.
Through society's demographics, that being white has societal privileges that being black does not. But
we can
am
talk
very
about how that
interested-
manifests, because that's
I'm
more
also
interesting,
interested in what you just said now, is that you would stand next to anyone who has this. So, Mr. Shapiro, my question to you is, for Ms. Dunston, the tying the noose around the campus and writing messages that target African American young students, would you consider that hate speech, and then would you stand next to her and fight for her?
As I say, I would.
against that?
This is the first I'm hearing about it, honestly. But
Really?
Yeah. But from hearing about it, maybe because it's local. I mean, I'm from LA. But in any case, I'm more than happy to stand alongside her and fight whatever group was responsible for this. Not only more than happy. I mean, you're talking about the alt-right. Again, I was the #1 target of anti-Semitic harassment from the alt-right last year. So I'm more than happy to do all that. And
we all know what QAnon is, yeah? I did a show recently. No one in the audience knew what QAnon was. I explained it so well, a bunch of them joined. But just in case, if you don't know QAnon, it's this conspiracy theory that they believe there's like this secret group of rich pedophiles running the world. And I'm like, guys, the Catholic Church is right there. The Boy Scouts are right there. We don't need your pedophile fan fiction. I think one of the things that upsets me the most, QAnon, whenever there's like a shooting in America, these QAnon people, they believe it's staged. Have you heard of this? They think they're crisis actors is the term. They think everyone involved in the shooting are crisis actors. And I swear, I want to grab those fuckers and be like, where are these auditions? God! Somebody give me a shot! I know Hollywood's trying to be more diverse, but I'm a straight white man. I could play any of the shooters. Here's how you know there's no such thing as crisis. Because there's no such thing as an actor who booked a job and kept it a secret. If I booked a shooting, I'd be on Facebook the next day like, guys, can't say what it is, but tune into CNN at 3.
The internet has been accused of wrecking many things over the years. The record industry, blockbuster video, travel agents, roadmaps, empathy, civilized debate, and porno mags. One thing it hasn't killed, though, is the conspiracy theory. In fact, the internet is breathing new life into some crazy ideas that have been doing the rounds for centuries.
From Hollywood, you are on notice!
QAnon is so famous now that even your gran knows about it. In fact, that's basically the problem. Your gran loves QAnon, and so do all her Facebook friends. But QAnon isn't as new as you'd imagine. It's basically a version of every old conspiracy theory. And at its heart is a thing called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, the most damaging conspiracy theory in history. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion is a 100-year-old book. It's a book that was read by Hitler and a book that inspired the 9/11 terrorists. It is perhaps the most dangerous book ever published, a crazy lie that has hung over the head of every single Jewish person ever since. The book claims to be a real record of a secret meeting. In this secret meeting, powerful Jewish people plot to take over the world, secretly start wars, manipulate banks and media, and form an eternal one-world government. Obviously, this is an insane racist fantasy. The Protocols was proven to be a hoax in 1921. It was most likely the work of the Russian Empire's secret police, looking to whip up support for the Tsar by scapegoating a minority, in this case, Jewish people. Despite the fact that the vast majority of European Jews lived in abject poverty, the existence of a few wealthy Jewish families was spun into conspiracy theories of an insular and self-interested Hebrew cabal out to control the world. This is all clearly an insane lie. Unfortunately, the world is a very racist place, so plenty of people were happy to believe it. When the Protocols was published, it was followed by a wave of violent mob riots that led to thousands of Jews being killed. And in America, Henry Ford, the guy who made Ford cars, gave away 500,000 copies for free. More recently, Colonel Gaddafi and Hamas are among those who've used them to bolster anti-Semitic resentment in the Middle East, and it was even the inspiration for a major Egyptian TV series as recently as 2012.
الحركة الصهيونية العنصرية دي حركة بتتحضر من زمان، خطة بتتحضر من زمان وكمان من قبل الميلاد. غزو صهيوني سلمي لكل دول العالم وبخبز التعبان الرمزي.
The lies of the Protocols spread so widely that its central idea of a secret evil group ruling the planet is now fairly common. It is the center point for many conspiracy theories, especially QAnon. QAnon gospel claims that the world is run by the families of Hillary Clinton, who isn't Jewish, George Soros, who is, and the Rothschilds, who are as well. Q says that they run the media, control the banks, invent wars, and want to start a one-world government. Sound familiar?
Stoking protests across the U.S. at various college campuses. In the Northeast, a pro-Palestinian demonstration at Brooklyn College. And at Columbia University, massive crowds as supporters of both Israel and Palestinians held competing protests.
Columbia, open your eyes!
In the nation's capital, American University students gathering in solidarity with Israel.
The horror has reached an unimaginable level.
While supporters of Palestinians made their presence known.
It's scary. I mean, I walked up here with my flag on and I instantly took it off because people are telling you to be careful.
At UNC Chapel Hill, tensions boiling between supporters of the two sides. Arizona State University Students for Justice in Palestine holding a rally today outside the Student Union, one day after the school's Hillel Jewish organization held a vigil in support of Israel. The school acknowledging the distress and concern caused by the week's events in a statement, but some Jewish students say it doesn't go far enough.
There was no real statement saying what happened was wrong, which I think is
stressing out a lot of the Jewish students.
A war of words also playing out in statements from student groups and university's leadership. The University of Florida president issuing a viral statement saying in part, quote, "There is no defense for terrorism. This shouldn't be hard." The NYU Law Student Bar Association president possibly out of a campus title and future job offer at a law firm for writing "Israel bears full responsibility for Hamas's attack" in a weekly bulletin, leaving some of the school's Jewish community on edge.
I've honestly been avoiding campus. I didn't go to class this afternoon.
The Student Bar Association voting to start the president's removal process as a result, and NYU condemning the terrorist attack on Israel in a statement. At Harvard, it's Palestinian solidarity groups initially releasing a joint statement holding the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all the unfolding violence.
At the end of the day, this is a group that seeks the destruction of the Jewish race, and it's not the right time to be issuing a pro-Palestinian statement.
Israel's response in Gaza to the Hamas attacks has led to protests across the U.S. demanding a ceasefire, with many calling for an end to U.S. military aid to Israel.
If you want my money, you better listen to me.
The U.S. provides about $3.8 billion in aid to Israel every year, and since World War II, the U.S. has provided more foreign aid to Israel than any other country. But today, there are increasingly vocal calls for more scrutiny of that aid from the left wing of the Democratic Party, including threats to scuttle Biden's request for $14.3 billion in additional assistance to Israel.
It's changing the nature of the discussion now. It was once frowned upon to criticize Israel publicly, and now you're seeing more and more that people are doing so, and those calls are getting louder and louder.
This is a simple request for information.
On January 16th, Senator Bernie Sanders introduced a resolution that sought to impose conditions on continued aid to Israel.
It simply requests a report on how U.S. aid is being used. This is a very modest, common sense proposal.
Sanders' resolution would freeze aid to Israel unless the State Department produced a report within 30 days examining whether Israel has committed human rights violations in Gaza.
What is going on in Israel right now is being done significantly with U.S. military aid. So the 2,000-pound bombs, which have the capability of wiping out entire neighborhoods, those are American bombs.
As expected, the Senate overwhelmingly rejected Senator Sanders' resolution in a 72-11 vote.
We can and should continue to push Israel towards a targeted prosecution of the war against Hamas in Gaza, but passing this resolution does not do that. In fact, I would say it is counterproductive to it.
Are we complicit? And the answer obviously is yes, we are. And that's why I brought up this resolution, and I and other members will continue to fight for accountability from Israel.
Even though the resolution failed, it represents a historic level of scrutiny for U.S. aid to Israel.
Just the fact that the Senate is now forced to debate this issue publicly really shows that there's a changing tide. Even if it didn't go anywhere and it was overwhelmingly rejected, the fact that senators are now forced to grapple with this question publicly shows that there is increasing pressure to do more.
An historic moment for Zion, which is celebrated in Washington at the office of the Jewish Agency for Palestine as a small boy runs the flag of the new Jewish state out on the staff.
In 1948, the United States was the first country in the world to recognize Israel.
The United States recognizes the provisional government as the de facto authority of the new state of Israel.
But there really wasn't financial assistance attached. There was a little bit of money, loans to help resettling all the people into Israel. And of course, this was still right after the Holocaust.
Many had suffered great hardships in the past. She, for instance, was evidently once merely a number in some Nazi Belsen.
Which was an important part of the context for the creation of Israel.
In the 1950s and 60s, the U.S. provided the new country with economic aid, but by the early 1970s, U.S. aid became mostly military assistance. In 1973, two Soviet client states, Egypt and Syria, launched a coordinated surprise attack on Israeli forces in the Sinai and the Golan Heights. Israel ultimately repelled the attacks and regained lost ground, but only after the U.S. made the decision to supply the Israeli military.
Are you satisfied with the amount of equipment you're getting from the United States?
I'm very happy with what we are getting and very thankful for that.
In 1973, Israel was defending itself against two Soviet clients. That created an incentive for the United States and Israel to align more closely. The real pivot came after the Camp David Agreement.
Signed at the White House by the leaders of Egypt, Israel, and the United States. After decades of mistrust and warfare, it looks as if American diplomacy has finally made possible a formal peace treaty between the two old adversaries.
That really created a very different relationship with Israel, a very different American security commitment to Israel. And it was also the 1970s where Israel went from being a somewhat partisan, mostly democratic cause to being a bipartisan national issue.
For decades, U.S. economic aid to Israel helped support the Israeli economy. But since the rapid expansion of Israel's economy in the 1990s, U.S. economic aid to Israel began to gradually phase out in the 21st century.
So there was a shift over time, agreed to by both sides, where the American assistance to Israel, which had been balanced after the Camp David Agreement in 1979 between economic and military assistance, became only military assistance.
Let me share with you why making sure Israel and Ukraine succeed is vital for America's national security. You know, history has taught us that when terrorists don't pay a price for their terror, when dictators don't pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos and death and more destruction. In Israel, we must make sure that they have what they need to protect their people today and always.
Last year, President Biden requested $14.3 billion in additional assistance to Israel. A $14 billion funding request would provide an additional $10.6 billion for the Pentagon to better equip Israel. The U.S. military response to the Hamas attack includes ammunition and interceptors to replenish Israel's Iron Dome system, which is the bedrock of the country's defense.
It's now Mossab Hassan Youssef. He is the son of a Hamas founding father and later became one of Israel's top informants. He went undercover with Hamas from 1997 until 2007 on behalf of Israel's Shin Bet security services, and he now lives in an undisclosed location. Mossab Youssef, thank you so much for joining us. What did you see and experience that made you turn on Hamas and help Israel?
You know, since I was a child, I always complained to my father about Hamas abuse of power and their brutality. You know, they're very strict and they very religious. They're fanatics, and but I did not think at some point, you know, they would cause all this global trouble. You know, they are. We saw their brutality. I witnessed their brutality firsthand when I was in prison, when they tortured so many Palestinian people.
Did the barbarity and the cruelty of what Hamas did to innocent civilians on October 7th, did that surprise you?
Well, you know, they surprised me as they surprised everybody by the scale of the attack. You know, we did not see that coming. But their brutality, their nature, it did not surprise me. You know, back in 1996, they killed so many people. They tortured so many people. Our, you know, prison mates, basically, people I knew personally. They did all type of crazy things. The scale of the attack on October 7th, that was a surprise, I think, for everybody, including Hamas themselves. This is not a political propaganda. I, as an ex-Hamas member, the son of the founder of Hamas organization, and today, as an American citizen, I ask the President of the United States to give Israel the necessary cover, the necessary supply, whatever it takes to uproot Hamas. Otherwise, the next war is going to be deadlier.